Ryan Preece was not very happy with Carson Hocevar after the Camping World Truck Series race, and Fox reveals the final two people that are going to be in the AllStars booth as guest analysts. What's going on, guys? It's Daniel, and welcome back to our video. We got a lot of NASCAR and other motorsports stories discussed here today on the channel. Let's go ahead and just jump straight into those really quickly. The first story we're going to talk about is Shell, as we already talked about Shell earlier this past week, but it was also revealed on, I believe on Friday, that Shell, with the new Shell partnership, IndyCar moved to a 100% renewable fuel. This is really huge with the bringing of renewable fuel. It's going to create less carbon emissions, and it's going to be better for the environment. I think it's really cool that Shell is continuing to be a partner with Team Penske. We already talked about they're going to be partnered with Team Penske. Their sponsor, Joe got on the Cup Series for 30 races, and I think it's amazing that Shell is continuing their partnership in their branding. I think it's really awesome, and glad to see if they're continuing their partnership in their branding. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about a Goodyear tire. Now, there was a lot of crazy incidents that happened at Charlotte Motor Speedway, but one of the craziest incidents that happened at Charlotte Motor Speedway this past week is that a fan literally tried to steal a Goodyear tire and sneak it out of the garage. Now, basically, NASCAR officials caught this fan, and they brought the tire back. It's unclear if the fan basically got kicked out of the track for the weekend or not, but a fan basically tried to steal the Goodyear tire. I cannot believe that a fan tried to do that. It's one of the wildest and wackiest things I've seen this year so far. And anything's possible in NASCAR. We've seen fans being escorted out of tracks. We've seen fans trying to fight the security after the Coke 600. And it's crazy to think that a fan basically tried to steal the Goodyear tire. Absolutely nuts and absolutely crazy, to be honest with you. And now we're going to jump on to the next story, as we're going to talk about the Xfinity Series race from Charlotte for one big reason and one reason only. So, if you watched the NASCAR Xfinity Series race, you probably saw the huge lead that Josh Berry had at the end of the race. The margin of victory that Josh Berry had was 18.039 seconds. That is, according to Joseph Strictly, that is the largest victory since Charlotte 2002, I believe in the spring or the fall race, a Little Trees 300, which I think either Matt Kenseth or Mark Martin or Jeff Burton won. That's the largest victory in nearly 20 years since we were at Charlotte Motor Speedway. Holy bananas, absolutely crazy. I think that finish was crazy. But even though the finish was large and how big it was, that does not basically indicate how great the race was. It would have been much closer if Justin Allgaier had not gotten to the outside wall trying to battle Josh Berry for the victory. And he and Justin Allgaier, both Allgaier and Berry, had the two fast cars in this race, and they're really tough to beat. So it's not a major surprise that basically the lead was as big as it was, and that's the largest lead for the Xfinity Series in their history. It was really in almost 20 years. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about the Coca-Cola 600 for a big reason. So, the Coca-Cola 600, according to reports, says it is the longest Cup Series race in the sports history. In fact, the longest race in NASCAR history. Not on time. Taryn Werrick, I believe, reported this is the third or fourth longest race when it comes to time. But according to miles, this is the longest race. This race was 619.5 miles, like I mentioned, being the longest Cup Series race. This race had an overtime, and this race also had 18 cautions, and this race literally almost went 5.5 hours, a very long race with Denny Hamlin winning. But even though this race was extremely long, this race was amazing, and I hope that Charlotte continues to put on good shows. I think it is not only the best Coke 600 we've seen, it was probably the best race I've seen so far this season by almost a long shot. If you know, I thought Auto Club was really good. I thought this race was absolutely incredible and absolutely amazing, and the Coke 600 was an absolutely phenomenal race, and I think they basically have figured out how to get the racing good on intermediate tracks with the Next Gen car. The Next Gen has done absolutely an amazing job when it comes to that race, and they absolutely did an incredible job. Amazing race. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Mason Maggio. As there is a reveal this morning that Mason Maggio is going to be making his Truck Series debut this weekend at Worldwide Technology Raceway, driving the number 33 for the Ram Brothers Racing organization. Mason Maggio, for those who don't know, is a development driver in the Rick Ware Racing plant, and I do believe that Ram Brothers Racing does have a little bit of partnership at times with the Rick Ware Racing Group, and this is going to be a really good experience for Mason Maggio. Mason Maggio is only currently 17 years old, and he's been winning races in the late model series over there and has been doing an amazing job. It is not a surprising that Mason Maggio is getting some experience in the Truck Series. It's unclear how many races he'll run with the team, but I think it's cool that he's getting an opportunity. Now, what are my expectations for Mason Maggio? I think Mason Maggio is going to surprise some people. I think he'll have a decent run in that truck. I'm not expecting to be very competitive because, let's be honest, I don't think Rambo's Racing has really been a fast team. But I think getting that experience in the Truck Series is really going to matter a lot. So I hope he gets a top 35 finish. I know it's a really low expectation since there's only 36 trucks, but I think that he will do solid, and I'm glad to see that Mason Maggio is making his Camp World Truck Series debut this weekend at Worldwide Technology Raceway. And now we're going to move on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about Johnny Sutter. As Johnny Sutter is going to be returning to the Truck Series this weekend in the number 13 for ThorSport Racing at Worldwide Technology Raceway. Johnny Sutter has made, I believe, 2 starts so far this year. His first start coming Glory to God Racing in the first race in the 47 truck, where he absolutely was horrendous and did not have a good run. The next race would be at Martinsville, where he would be really impressive and finish in the top 5. This would be his third start, like I said, of the 2022 season. I think Johnny Sutter is going to surprise a lot of people this weekend. He was really competitive. I know he's not been running full-time, and there's reasons for that, but I think he's absolutely done an incredible job when he's ran the races this year, and I do think that Johnny Sutter will be somewhat competitive here this week. I really think that Johnny Sutter will be somewhat competitive. I think he's got a shot at getting a top 10, and I'm excited to see that Johnny Sutter is back behind the wheel. I think he could win the race. I don't think he's going to win, but I think he could win the race and could be a major surprise. I'm happy to see that he's back this weekend with ThorSport Racing. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about the Monaco Grand Prix. Now, we already talked about the Indianapolis 500 and the Coke 600 on the channel. If you haven't checked those reviews out, I suggest going to check those out. But we also had the first race being the Monaco Grand Prix. Now, this race would not end up getting all their laps in, and Sergio Perez would end up winning, but not without some controversy throughout this race. Before the race even started, we were delayed by almost an hour and 15 minutes because we basically had a little bit of rain on the track, and the FIA made some stupid calls. Apparently, the race director, who's running the race at the time, was only in a second F1 race. Geez, no surprise they're making stupid calls right there, and only the second race for the guy. After, though, that long rainy lane, F1 made a bad decision to start. They eventually got the race going, and we saw a very intriguing race. Charles Leclerc would dominate the early portion of the F1 race, but basically because of the changes of the tires and basically where he got caught up because of traffic and dropped from basically leading the race, dropping all the way back to 4th. The duel would come down to Sergio Perez versus Carlos Sainz, and the race ended up being timed after a massive accident for Mick Schumacher, whose SAR basically got sawed in half, and it became a time race, and it came down to the duel between Carlos Sainz and Sergio Perez, and Perez hung on. Usually, the race at Monaco is never this intriguing, so it was one of the best Monaco GPs I think we've ever seen. It was an absolutely crazy and a really awesome race, and I'm glad to see that people really enjoyed that race as well. I thought it was a great race overall, and Sergio Perez picked up the Monaco GP win. Congratulations to Sergio Perez on winning the Monaco Grand Prix. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about ESPN and F1. Now, there's a report that came out on Friday from Adam Stern that Burke Mattis, who is basically the executive who runs a lot of things for ESPN, he says that ESPN intends to keep F1 commercial-free if it renews the rights. And the only ad option being considered if the fees basically do apply and if there's more increased fees is split screen, and there's no plan for full screen commercials. Honestly, one thing that Formula 1 has done a really good job at compared to even IndyCar content and NASCAR content is you really never miss the action. And it's good to see that they're trying to find a way to keep the full screen and basically no full screen commercials. At least that's one thing we can all be happy with, is the fact that they're not going to be having any full screen commercials. Because I think full screen commercials are a negative, bad thing, and you miss a lot of the action. Look at the Coke 600. One thing is that a lot of cautions happened to the Coke 600, and we didn't get to see the action. With the F1 race, even during the red flag, they really never went to commercial at all. And that's one thing NASCAR struggled with, especially during red flags, is they've had commercials. And I know that Sky Sports and ESPN play a massive fee for them to not have commercials. I think it's like a couple $1 million, if I'm not mistaken, which Sky Sports has a lot of money to foot that bill. But I do believe that having no commercials in your race is good for the sport. And I think that's one thing that, like I said, Formula 1 has generally done a majorly good job on compared to the other series. So I hope we can find a way to not have commercials going for us. I think commercials in racing is a bad thing. You miss a lot of the action. And no other sport has commercials. Look at NFL. They do have it during basically when they have timeouts, but you really don't miss any of the action. NBA, you never miss the action. MLB, you really never miss the action. That's one thing that NASCAR and these other sports probably should listen to Formula One, and I'm glad to see that they're trying to find a way to get Formula One and make sure that that stays commercial-free going forward. I think it'll be great for the sport as a whole, and generally, I hope they do continue to have races be commercial-free going forward in the near future, to be honest with you. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about the 2023 All-Star race. Now, Texas Motor Speedway basically put out that they're expecting that they will have the 2023 All-Star race once again. Well, they ended up deleting their post about the All-Star race because the account basically that posted it, the Texas Motor Speedway account, got absolutely ratioed really, really bad. So many people were complaining about it, and I think there's a really justified reason why people were really, really mad. Nobody wants the All-Star race to really even be back at Texas Motor Speedway. In fact, nobody wants NASCAR at all to be back at Texas Motor Speedway. Especially after an incredible Coca-Cola 600 that we had, nobody wants to be back at Texas Motor Speedway. The racing's been horrendous for such a long time, and the fact that the next-gen car, a car that was supposed to produce much better racing for the series, the fact that the next-gen car could not even produce any good racing really shows you how bad Texas Motor Speedway is, considering we've had great races at Auto Club, we had a great race at Kansas, a great race in Las Vegas, an amazing race at Coca-Cola Center, which was the best race of the season. The fact that the All-Stars could not produce any sort of racing, they were shifting, everything that could go wrong with the next-gen car went wrong in this race. And I really hope and pray that we don't have the All-Star race back in Texas. I mean, it's funny that they basically had to delete the post because of how much backlash you're getting. And again, it's rightfully so why they got a ton of backlash for it. Because again, the racing was just so bad in the All-Stars. It was just a horrendous show. And no one really, really liked it. So I'm glad people ratio Texas Motor Speedway. I think it's absolutely funny. And I do agree with a lot of people, though. I thought the All-Star race was absolutely horrendous. It's a joke. The All-Star race has been dying. And the only way I think you can save it is either bring it back to Charlotte or rotate the races. And honestly, especially after a really strong race this last weekend, if we bring it back to Charlotte, you're going to sell out a crowd. You had a great crowd for the Coast 600. And I hope and pray that eventually we do stop racing here. I thought it was a really, really great race for the Coast 600 and a terrible race for the All-Star race, in my honest and sincere opinion. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Pato O'Ward. As it was officially revealed, there's been a lot of indications and really unclear what the future of Pato O'Ward is in IndyCar. It basically was revealed on Friday that Pato O'Ward has signed a contract extension with Aaron McLaren SP, and he will continue driving for Aaron McLaren SP through 2025. He also will be able to do some testing along with Colin Herta. He has joined McLaren's test program and will be able to test Formula One cars for McLaren's F1 team and be able to do some practice sessions throughout the seasons. I think this is absolutely a great pickup that this team has decided to bring the contract back for Pato O'Ward. Because Pato O'Ward has been absolutely amazing in the years he's been so far with Aaron McLaren SP. I know he's only won one race so far this year, and of course that came at Barber, and he's been a little more inconsistent this year than he's been in past years. But he had a really good Indy 500 finishing second and is really right now around the points lead at the moment. Of course, Marcus Ericsson, who won the Indianapolis 500, actually being the points leader right now. He is a guy that I think can win the championship and win multiple championships over the next couple years. I know a lot of people were speculating about his future, maybe thinking he was maybe going to be a driver that was going to go to McLaren's F1 program, considering Daniel Ricciardo's future currently in F1 is uncertain with McLaren at the moment, but also a lot of people think that Colin Herta might be the driver that might be going to McLaren if that Andretti F1 program, the Andretti Global program, does not get approved, which a lot of people apparently want that approved. I also do as well want it approved, but it's unclear if they're going to approve that program or not. I think it's a massive pickup to bring Preece O'Ward back. I think he's going to win a lot of races with the team. He nearly won the Indy 500, which would have been huge for Pato O'Ward's career. He's been so close to winning the Indy 500. I think it will happen in the future, but I am so excited to see that he is back with this team going next year. He's done amazing. He's done incredible, and he absolutely deserves to be back with this team. Congratulations to Pato O'Ward on getting a contract extension with the team. He absolutely deserves it, in my honest and sincere opinion. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Max Verstappen. Now, Nate Saunders wrote out a very strong article about Max Verstappen. And a lot of people have been wondering if Max Verstappen has ever had any indication about racing in the Indianapolis 500. Well, Max Verstappen this past weekend pretty much confirmed that he has no desire to race in the Indianapolis 500. Of course, the defending Formula 1 champion, who currently has the points lead over Charles Leclerc at this moment by, I believe, 9 points or 10 points currently at the moment, has no desire to come over to the United States and race in the Indianapolis 500. I think the truth of the matter is that Max Verstappen is scared. I'm a little more surprised that more drivers are not willing to make that jump over and run in the Indianapolis 500, considering the cars in IndyCar are, while they're not as safe as like a NASCAR Cup Series car, which I think it'd be cool if he came over to NASCAR, and I think he probably has more desires to race in NASCAR because those cars are a little bit safer than in IndyCar. I'm a little bit shocked he's not considering it is the biggest race in the world, and it really could cement his legacy in the world of racing. Because again, a lot of people consider Max Verstappen to be one of the best drivers in the world, which I think he is one of the best drivers in the world. I think if Max Verstappen really wanted to cement his legacy in the world of racing, I do believe that running the Indy 500 really could do that for him. And he's a really good driver too, so I'm kind of shocked he's not even considering run the Indy 500 at the moment. Maybe he'll change his mind. I know some drivers have changed their mind about racing Indy 500. We know that Jimmy Johnson a long time ago, who really did not have a great Indy 500 this year, we know that he basically said it for a long time he didn't have no interest in running it, and eventually he did run it after the aero screen came up. Maybe long term he changed his mind and runs Indy 500 for Max Verstappen, but I think if Max Verstappen truly wanted to really absolutely cement his legacy in the world of racing, I do believe he should run the Indianapolis 500. I think it would be great for him, and honestly, I do hope he changes his mind and decides to run Indy 500. But to be perfectly honest with you, I don't think he'll run it, at least as of now. Maybe he'll change his mind, but honestly, I do not expect that he will run the Indianapolis 500, to be honest with you, at all. And now we're going on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Tony Kanaan. Now, this story really came out of nowhere, and this came on NASCAR Reddit, and it comes from a group called the Grande Premia, who were basically our Brazilian group, or I think we basically grouped them from Brazil, who do reports out there. It basically reports that Tony Kanaan apparently is, according to him, is apparently in negotiations to run 2 NASCAR races this season. Now, no valid reporters from the United States are reported on this, but the fact that Tony Kanaan is in negotiations, according to this, he's apparently going to run 2 races. Now, one thing that's really important to note is Tony Kanaan does run Stock Car Brazil, and basically, of course, his only race he ran the Indy 500 where he finished in 3rd and had a shot to win the Indy 500. Tony Kanaan had a great Indy 500. Tony Kanaan, of course, competes in Stock Car Brazil at the current moment, and he, of course, he's a 2013 Indianapolis 500 win and 2004 IndyCar champion. I think it would be amazing if Tony Kanaan race in NASCAR. He's been having a little more oval experience, and like I mentioned, he is going to be running the SRX here in about a month from now and running multiple races in that series this season. So it's not a surprise that Tony Kanaan is considering. Now, the big question is, what kind of races are he going to run? It's a no-brainer. He's looking to run some road course races. I'd like to see him run some oval races, but he's basically looking to run 2 road course races this upcoming season, and they have to basically not be in when he's doing the Stock Car Brazil and the SRX as well. So I think more than likely, he's probably going to run a couple of the later races like Watkins Glen and the Charlotte Roval. And would it be the Cup Series, Xfinity Series? I'm thinking more than likely, it's probably going to most likely be the NASCAR Xfinity Series like a Junior Motorsports. I know that 5th car is potentially available to run for that team. I know that that car is only running a few races this season with a bunch of Cup guys. They've also had Miguel Paludo in the car. And I do think that Tony Kanaan would be a great pickup for Junior Motorsports. I also think Spire Motorsports could be a potential option as well. It's unclear how many races that, because I know that Josh Leakey's only got some more races locked up, because I know that Landon Cassill only supposed to run 11 races, and he's nearly ran most of the season so far. So more than likely, I would think that Tony Kanaan is probably in the capper seat to maybe get in that ride. But I'm still thinking more than likely. I know that Project 91 car would be available, but again, the car is only planning to run 1 race this season. I think if Tony Kanaan is going to run any Cup Series race or any races, it's probably going to be Xfinity and more likely with Junior Motorsports. Maybe it's Alpha Prime Racing, though. I'm not sure if they have any races they have available for that 45 team or the 44 team for that matter, but I think Tony Kanaan is a really, really good driver, and if he really would, I'd love to see Tony Kanaan come over and race in NASCAR. And if these reports are true, I think it will generally be big for the sport. We'll see what happens going forward, but there's a very strong possibility that Tony Kanaan could possibly run in the 2 NASCAR Cup Series races or 2 races in 2022. We'll wait to see what happens. There's a very strong possibility he could race in NASCAR this season. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Noah Gragson versus Jeb Burton. Now, I was not able to watch the NASCAR Xfinity Series race live, but I saw on Twitter, when I was actually at work, that Jeb Burton and Noah Gragson got into a confrontation after the race. Basically, they exchanged some really, really big words. He basically said, I'll wreck the you-know-what out of you. And basically, he reiterated, and Noah Gragson was also not very happy as well. Basically said, talking to Noah Lewis, who basically, I don't remember what organization Noah Lewis works for, but he basically was talking to Noah Lewis as well, and basically said that he has no comment, basically says, I only talk about people who can win races. Now, I have no idea what really, basically at the time, we really did not know what really is said from. I watched the race, and I saw that Noah Gragson basically passed Jeb Burton clean and got around him, and he basically just runs into the back of him. Now, then we basically saw later in the evening, or the next, starting really for a day or two, Jeb Burton has been going off on Twitter. Jeb Burton basically then responded to Noah Gragson on Twitter, basically saying, yeah, I basically outperformed him in equipment, and basically said he got in there because of daddy's money. Let me explain something to Jeb Burton really, really quick here. Jeb, Noah Gragson, I hate to break it to you, dude, but in that same equipment that you both ran against each other in 2020, I think Jeb Burton was with Junior Motorsports 2 years ago, if I'm not mistaken. Noah Gragson outperformed you in pretty much every single race, and he actually won 2 races in 2020. Jeb, what have you honestly done, dude? You have 1 Xfinity Series win and 1 Truck Series victory. And that Xfinity Series win I liked that with Colorado Racing last year came from basically a rain-shortened victory at Talladega in the spring. And without that, I don't think you're going to win the race. Now, I'm not saying Jeb Burton is a bad driver, but he's overreacting here. And then he just continued on Sunday morning, basically showed a replay of Noah Gragson basically pulling a slide job on you, which is a clean pass. He passed you pretty cleanly, and you're overreacting. And then basically, you started blocking a ton of people on Twitter and started going off. I said this on Twitter, and I'm going to say this here. Jeb Burton needs to focus on trying to make the NASCAR Xfinity Series Plus and not focus on what Noah Gragson's doing. And let's not forget that Noah Gragson, by the way, was down a cylinder. He had 7 cylinders compared to you, Jeb, who had 8. Now, you're a guy who has a shot at making the playoffs this year, which is really, really good to see that our Motorsports is really improving their program. Jeb Burton, you need to focus on trying to make the Xfinity Series playoffs, dude. You're outside the cutoff line right now. You're ahead of Sheldon Creed, which is a positive for you. But you need to really, in my opinion, focus on trying to make the NASCAR Xfinity Series Plus and not focus on what Noah Gragson is doing, because Noah Gragson went off on you. And it's no wonder a lot of drivers seem like they don't have a lot of respect for you, because not only did Noah Gragson try to clown on you a little bit, I know that Sheldon Creed was rooting for you. I know that Carson Hocevar was rooting for you. A ton of drivers were rooting for him to do well in the Coca-Cola 600 in your post, and he got really trolled hard, and he blocked a lot of people and got salty. If I'm Jeb Burton, I don't understand why he's frustrated and upset, and he says, oh, no, Gragson was the one who was pissed. I'm not entirely sure if that's true, if Noah was the one pissed, or you're the one that's a little salty that you got raced hard. Oh, poor guy, you got raced hard. Oh, my goodness, drivers getting raced hard in this series. Jesus Christ, what a world we live in. But anyway, I think that Jeb Burton needs to focus on trying to win a race and try to make the playoffs right now and not focus on what Noah Gragson is doing, in my honest opinion. And now we're going to jump on to the first of 2 major stories of today's episode, as we're going to talk about the Fox Sports booth. Now, the Fox basically during the Coke 600 revealed the final 2 people that are going to be in the Fox Sports booth for this season. Michael Waltrip, who currently works at Fox Sports at the moment, is going to be in the Fox Sports booth at Worldwide Technology Raceway, and Tony Stewart is going to be in the booth for the final race with Fox Sports at Sonoma. Let's start off with Michael Waltrip for a second. I am so glad that I'm going to be at the Cup Series race for that, because I feel so bad for Mike Joy. Michael Waltrip, let me explain something about Michael Waltrip when it comes to his commentary. I do not think Michael Waltrip does a great job in the booth, and I think he is going to struggle massively. And he's going to be with Clint Boyer, who does not bring a lot of analytical evidence. For the first race at Gateway, I feel for the fans that are going to watch. I expect that we're probably going to see references of what happened in 2008, and I feel for the pre-race as well, because Michael Waltrip, I don't think he does a great job in Truck Series. He's probably going to obsess with drivers over. I don't hate Michael Waltrip. I like Michael Waltrip, and I think his grid walks some are actually okay, and it's kind of thing that supplements him. Is one thing that Michael Waltrip, I think, actually does fine. I just don't think Michael Waltrip's that great of a commentator, unfortunately. I just don't think he's that well. He gets a little bit overexcited. Sometimes his excitement isn't there, and I really don't think Michael Waltrip is going to do a great job in the booth, and I'm worried that he and Clint are going to cause controversy. Now, Darrell Waltrip, Clint Boyer, I was really surprised how good they were, and maybe we'll see Michael Waltrip do well, but to be honest with you, I don't expect Michael Waltrip to do well at Worldwide Technology Raceway Gateway. Now, Tony Stewart, talking about him, that's a different story. I think Tony Stewart in the race that he's done this year, I think he's done 2 or 3 races so far this year. The Daytona 500, the Clash, and also earlier this year, he did Coda. It's a perfect person to bring out. Tony Stewart being one of the most successful drivers in the history at Sonoma Raceway and an awesome road course racer. I think Tony Stewart is absolutely going to do an amazing job in the booth once again. I think outside of a couple people, I think he's been one of the better guest drivers that's not working at Fox. I think he's been one of the better people that comes in. He brings a lot of analytical evidence. He does a great job leading into the commentary, and he has a lot of jokes, but also does an amazing job overall. And I think that Tony Stewart, he will actually do an amazing job in the Fox Sports booth once again. But I said that about Tony Stewart. I think he's done an amazing job. He brings a lot of analytical stuff to the booth, and I think he'll do an amazing job. I think Tony Stewart is one of the better people. A lot of people say you want to put him in the booth full time, but Tony Stewart has so much pressure and a lot of things that he's trying to do. Run an NHRA team, basically try to run, an Xfinity Series team, a Cup Series team, basically tries to run a bunch of different organizations, a sprint car team, on those things, and he tries to run a bunch of different things at once, and it's tough for him to do that, so he can't do it full time, but I'm glad that Fox is ending on a high note. They started off with Tony Stewart, and they're finishing with Tony Stewart, which I think is overall a positive. Sucks that Michael Waltrip's in the booth at Worldwide Technology Races. I'm not expecting him to do really, really well, but I think that Tony Stewart generally will do a good job in the Fox Sports booth in a couple weeks. I'm just worried about Michael Waltrip. I don't think the commentary will be well. I'll have to watch it after I get home from the Cup Series just because thank God I'm going to be there for that, so I don't have to listen to that crap. But overall, I'm excited to see a Tony Stewart's in the booth, but I'm not excited about Michael Waltrip being in the Fox Sports booth, to be honest with you. And now we're going to jump on to the final major story of today's episode, as we're talking about Ryan Preece versus Carson Hocevar. Now, if you watched the NASCAR Camp World Truck Series race from Charlotte Motor Speedway, you saw that Carson Hocevar, with around 5 laps to go, had about a 6.5 second lead over Ryan Preece. Unfortunately, like it's been all year for Carson Hocevar, bad luck struck with around 4 laps to go in this race. Jesse Little and Tyler Ankrum, they got into each other, racing each other really, really hard for around 18th position. They were already a lap down, and they basically took each other out of contention instead of trying to contend for the overall victory. 2 guys who should be running a little farther. Jesse Little, who's not in as good of a car. Tyler Ankrum, who should be trying to contend for a championship instead of running almost outside the top 20. I don't know what those 2 were doing. Because of that, we had a restart near the end of the race where Ryan Preece and Carson Hocevar were battling really, really hard. They were having contact down the backstretch, and going in turn number 3, Carson Hocevar went up the track, got a little loose, got a little sideways, and unfortunately got into Ryan Preece. They basically almost took each other out. Ryan Preece hit the outside wall. Carson Hocevar destroyed the back of his car, and Ryan Preece would have to come down pit road and basically get the damage fixed. Now, Carson Hocevar, who after the race did not end up winning, Ross Chastain and his teammate ended up winning, so Nice Motorsports picked up the victory. Carson Hocevar went on their basically TV. He was basically crying, upset, was basically in tears, and he took responsibility for the wreck. And like I said, took a lot of responsibility for the incident. Basically said it was a dumbass mistake on my part, and I don't usually make those mistakes. And he's just, I'm really going for my first win, and I made a misjudgment, and I made a mistake. Well, Ryan Preece, who I don't think saw the interview with Carson Hocevar, he was very, very livid. And on the TV, basically said, for you kids that are watching this series, don't do what Carson Hocevar did. Basically race with a ton of respect and show a lot of respect out there. Then Ryan Preece later on went on MRN and basically was really angry, saying how these kids do not show a lot of respect. And then basically on MRN, they asked if Ryan Preece is going to talk to Carson Hocevar or not. He basically said, hell no, I'm not talking to Carson Hocevar after that. Now, let me talk about the incident and overall my thoughts on how Ryan Preece has kind of acted. Let's talk about it for a second, shall we? So, let me say this. Let's talk about it. Carson Hocevar took responsibility for the wreck, and he's a guy who has a lot of talent. He's been close to winning his first race of the year. Carson took responsibility for the wreck, and you have to give him props for taking responsibility. But let's talk about Ryan Preece for a second, how he kind of acted. Ryan Preece has every right to be upset with Carson Hocevar. He's trying to win a race. He's trying to make it back up to the Cup Series. But I think saying that Carson Hocevar is a driver who's wrecked a lot of people and saying that these kids should need to show a lot of respect, I don't think Carson Hocevar is a guy that really has been causing a lot of problems in the NASCAR Camp World Truck Series. I haven't seen Carson cause a lot of incidents this year, and I've seen Carson actually be really, really competitive in the Truck Series this year and should have won the race. And Ryan, let's not forget, dude, that without that wreck for Jesse Little and Tyler Ankrum, you're probably not even in the position to contend for the victory. So, like I said, I understand Ryan Preece's frustration, but but I kind of feel like he really went off. And by the way, Carson Hocevar is 19 years old, and he's going to learn from mistakes, and I think he's eventually going to win. And look, I think Ryan Preece maybe got a little bit over backlash for his interview. He's showing a lot of passion, and I get that. But I also would say this to Ryan Preece. I don't like the fact that you're not going to talk to Carson Hocevar. Carson literally admitted to his mistake on TV, and then Carson basically kind of went off on Ryan Preece a little bit after basically saying, I got loose, we're racing hard, we're going for the win, going for my first career win. And Carson, like I mentioned, is going for his first career Truck Series victory. I can't blame Carson for trying to race you really, really hard to get that first career win. And dude, like I said, it's the end of the race. You do what you got to do. I would understand if Carson Hocevar has been wrecking a lot. I understand if Brian's comments. And look, your teammate, by the way, Hailie Deegan's been struggling this year, but you won't talk about your teammate at all. And I love Hailie Deegan, but for God, she has been not that great this year in the Truck Series this year. And Ryan, I like you, dude. You've done really good in the Truck Series, but man, I don't agree with your comments entirely. I don't understand it. Again, I understand Ryan Preece's frustration. I entirely get it. Entirely understand his frustration, why he's upset. Again, he wants to go out there and win races and try to prove himself, especially since we don't know if he's going to be in a 10 car next year. We know he's probably the favorite to go in a 10 car for Stewart Racing, but you really don't know what happens. Things could change in the sport. He's got the KHI management. He's going to be around for a very, very long time. And then Carson, like I said, was kind of clowning on him in the Cup practice after Ryan basically spun out. Don't get me wrong. I understand Ryan's frustration. He's trying to make a name for himself. He's trying to do good. But I at the same time, I got to understand Carson basically just trying to win a race, trying to get his first career win. And you can't blame him. Overall, it's a 50-50 situation. You can't blame each other. And they're going to race against each other. And I think if I was Ryan Preece, and I'm in his situation, even though I'm a little upset, I would personally go and talk to Carson Hocevar, get my side of the story, talk about what happened, and Carson would probably tell it to your face. I'd rather see these guys talk face-to-face and not talk crap on a camera. If Ryan Preece was smart to talk about the racing in the series, which I agree there's been a lack of respect over the last couple years in trucks, I don't think he's entirely wrong, and he got a lot of the passion. But if I was Ryan Preece, I go talk face-to-face with Carson Hocevar and basically get the side of the story and agree to disagree with Carson and basically, hey, I'm just trying to go out there and race for a win. That's all I'm trying to do. I'm trying to get my first career win and trying to make a career for myself. I understand Ryan Preece's frustration, but again, at the same time, I really don't understand why Preece had to kind of go off on Carson like that, in my honest opinion. So anyway, that's for today's NASCAR and motorsports video. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe to the channel, notifications to be notified when a video does go live on my channel. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and support me on pages on the list schedule below with that, and comment your thoughts on today's video. Who do you think is in the right? Do you think that Carson Hocevar is in the right, or do you think that Ryan Preece is in the right? Let me know in the comments below. And what are your thoughts about all the other stories, including Tony Stewart being in the booth that we discussed today on the channel? Let me know in the comments below. Tomorrow on the channel, we're going to have race picks for the Gateway Race, the first ever race at Worldwide Technology Raceway. And in the next day or two, I'm going to be on the Casey Campbell channel. You will see me on the channel. I hope to see you there, and go check out his channel. Get that guy some subscribers. Get that guy out to 1,000. I'd like to see Casey try to reach 1,000 subscribers by the end of the year. That will try to help Casey get to that point and get to where I'm at. So anyway, like I said, I want to thank you guys for watching today's video, and I'll see you guys next time for some more great, awesome NASCAR and other motorsports content on the channel like this. Take care, everybody.